For decades, Bishop Walter Hawkins stood as a giant in gospel music, a voice of healing, a prophet of praise, a man whose songs moved millions. But while the world celebrated his ministry, behind the pulpit, something was left unsaid. Now, after years of silence, his son has finally stepped into the light, and what he reveals about Bishop Hawkins' final moments is nothing short of devastating. A truth buried in silence, protected by loyalty, and hidden from even his most devoted followers. And then there's Tremaine, the woman who stood beside him, who carried the weight of this secret in silence all these years. The world knows Bishop through his anthems like "Goin' Up Yonder" and the Love Alive series, but now it's time to hear the story behind the music. The side they never told. Until now. While the choir sang and the congregation shouted in praise, a far more personal, painful story was quietly unfolding, one the public never saw. Behind the pulpit, beyond the Grammy Awards and chart-topping gospel hits, Bishop Walter Hawkins was a man wrestling with battles that no spotlight ever caught. Now, after years of guarded silence, his son is finally ready to speak, revealing the raw, emotional truth of his father's final days. What were Bishop Hawkins' last words? What hidden family truths were kept locked behind closed doors? And perhaps most haunting of all, what did gospel legend Tremaine Hawkins know, yet choose never to reveal? This isn't just a story about a man's final breath. It's a revelation about legacy, unspoken pain, family secrets, and the heavy cost of silence. Today, we peel back the curtain and uncover the truths behind one of gospel music's most iconic voices. You won't believe what happened next, because this is where the story turns heartbreakingly personal. Long before the silence, before the pain and the hidden truths, there was triumph. Bishop Walter Hawkins wasn't just a gospel singer, he was the voice of a generation. With a velvet-rich tone that could cut through sorrow and lift even the most shattered soul, his music wasn't confined to pews and pulpits, it flowed into homes, hearts, and history. Born in Oakland, California, into a family overflowing with musical talent, Walter Hawkins was destined to lead. But no one could have foreseen just how deeply his voice would carve itself into the foundation of gospel music. From founding the Love Center Church to creating the earth-shaking Love Alive albums, he became something rare, both a pastor and a performer, a shepherd of souls and a superstar on stage. His legacy wasn't just heard, it was felt. Many people call the time he spent with the Hawkins family, especially with his brother Edwin Hawkins and his wife at the time, Tremaine Hawkins, the golden age of modern gospel. But there was something more going on beneath the spiritual highs and heavenly melodies. A lot of fans remember the happy times, like the Grammys, other awards, and the world trips. But not many people know about the long nights Walter had, the fights he fought alone, or the sacrifices he made behind closed doors. This is where things get tricky. Walt's personal life had its ups and downs. Even though he was strong on stage, his marriage to Tremaine started to fall apart because of the stress of the church, touring, and personal problems. People who knew the couple well said there were times when they didn't feel connected emotionally. In the light of gospel fame, two holy vessels are drifting apart. The marriage ended in the end, but the respect between them stayed. There were still whispers about Bishop Hawkins, even though the attention was still on him. People in his church didn't fully understand the whispers that he heard about the sick and the hurt. And his son was the only one who really saw this central figure in the gospel slowly fall apart. But now, years later, his son tells things that not many people could have imagined, like the last talk he had with his father that left him speechless and the truth that Tremaine had kept hidden for decades. In the second part, we'll go right into that powerful discovery. And believe me, what you're about to hear will shock you. Bishop Walter Hawkins' son stayed out of the public eye for a long time. His followers, fans, and other gospel musicians praised his dad's music and mission, and he watched with pride. When people paid respect to him, he smiled, nodded, and kept quiet. But now, more than 10 years after Bishop Hawkins died in 2010, he's finally talking about the last moments he spent with his dad and the scary truth he's been carrying around with him ever since. The son says that the last time they talked, the gospel star didn't make any of the big spiritual claims that one might expect from them. No, it was real, quiet, and painful. "I did the Lord's work, but I forgot to take care of myself," my dad told me as he looked at me. "I missed time. I'm not the same person I was before I met you, my family, or myself." These words are very strong. This wasn't the voice of the confident preacher or the high-pitched choir leader. This was a dad telling his kid that he felt terrible about what he did. The son then said that Walter seemed to be dealing with more mental pain than physical illness in the last few weeks of his life. He remembered reading the Bible with Walter next to his father's hospital bed, but Walter would suddenly whisper, "Tell them I did more than sing. As a man, I tried to make peace with everything I hid." That's where the quiet gets unbearable. The bishop's son said that his father had deep mental problems that not many people knew about. There were hurts that were not spoken, like unresolved problems with close friends, wounds from the split, and even disagreements within the family about his legacy. Reports say he was afraid that people would remember the song but not the man, even after all the awards and praise. Son said that Bishop Hawkins turning away from him in the middle of a talk and softly crying was a very sad moment. But not from pain. He was empty because he hadn't told some people certain things while he still had time. He wasn't scared of dying. The boy's father told him he was scared of dying alone. That's not all. The son also made it sound like Walter's ex-wife and longtime ministry partner, Hawkins, knew a lot more about his pain than she ever told him. It was said that she broke down while looking at the casket at the funeral. Not just from sadness, but also from the weight of words that were not said. A family friend who knew what was going on said that Tmain cried like she was hiding something. She said something to the coffin in a whisper. Even though no one could hear it, you knew it was a goodbye full of unfinished business. She has never talked about it in public, though. In section 3, the son talks about what he thinks Tmain knew and why she didn't say anything about it. This is the most shocking part. It has to do with a spiritual promise they both made many years ago, and you won't believe why she kept it to herself. As a gospel singer, Tmain Hawkins has a voice that could shake the clouds. She was beautiful on stage and sang songs with a lot of soul, but she never told the truth about the man she used to love and the pain he carried forever. As Walter Hawkins's son revealed more about his father's last moments, one name kept coming up over and over again. Tmain, the woman who used to be in ministry, marriage, and music with him. She had every reason to be angry after their painful split, but she chose to be quiet. But now, after years of being unknown, that silence is being called into question. Fans are now questioning everything because of what they've learned. The son said that Tmain came by himself during one of the last family visits before Walter died, without any cameras, press, or announcements. There were only the two of them, and it was quiet and close. Walter is said to have reached out and touched her hand. There was silence for a long time. She didn't cry at first, but after a while she did. Another nurse who was in the room said that Tmain leaned in and whispered, "I knew you were hurting. I didn't know how to help without getting hurt." Those words were very sharp. It's now thought that Tmain knew for years about Walter's mental problems and the stress he was under as a bishop, a father, a leader, and a cultural icon. But she didn't share what she knew. Why? Because, as her son now says, she and Walter made a spiritual promise in the late 1980s to protect each other's public mission no matter what happened between them in private. It turned out that promise was a jail. As a gospel singer, Tmain faced harsh criticism for her style, clothes, and choices. She learned the hard way that telling the truth doesn't always get you anywhere in the church community. There wasn't much room for weakness because of the pressure to look strong in the Lord. When Walter started to break under the stress, Tmain's first reaction was to protect his image, even if it meant he had to miss out on healing himself. In fact, Tmain was asked in a long-lost interview from the mid-2000s if she and Walter ever got over their breakup. "Closure isn't always public," was her answer. "Forgiveness can be most holy when it happens alone." Fans thought it was just pretty words at the time. This time, though, after her last visit and the son's admissions, it means more. Family members say that Tmain also kept some of Walter's diary entries that he had written when he was feeling very down. Notes that he never meant to share but that show what he talked about with God in secret. One entry that was allegedly only shown to the son in private said, "Lord, if my music heals other people but never gets to my own soul, did I do it right?" Take that in. Walter Hawkins, whose voice healed a lot of people, wondered if he had ever really fixed himself. And Tmain, she held that truth close to her heart without using it as a weapon, talking about it in interviews, or making it a secret. Being quiet wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a way for her to feel safe. Fans are now thinking if Tmain should speak out too, since Bishop Hawkins' son has already done so, or if what she did was enough. Fans began to piece together what Tmain Hawkins may have known but kept secret, and Bishop Walter Hawkins' son shared the emotional truth of his father's last words. The gospel world reacted not with condemnation, but with a huge wave of reflection. The internet went crazy. Fans of Love Alive for a long time shared videos of their shows with new captions, such as, "Now I hear the pain behind that praise." Some people wrote notes that talked about the silence itself. "Priest Hawkins, thank you for carrying a cross that we didn't see. Now you can relax." But as the sadness and memories came to the surface, something deeper began to show itself. A subject that church music has long avoided. How much does it cost to protect a property when the truth is buried? How many church leaders are quietly going through hard times to keep up their public image? And how many other families, like the Hawkins, have kept old wounds hidden for the sake of the church? The Bishop Hawkins' son story started a holy conversation that had been going on for too long about mental health, being honest about your feelings, and the culture of silence in the black church. Since then, a number of well-known gospel artists and pastors have reacted in a way that doesn't directly name anyone but clearly refers to the story. A well-known gospel singer wrote on Twitter, "Ministry can make you bleed silently sometimes. It's time for pastors and other leaders to get help as well as give it. If the church turns into a stage where broken people have to act whole, then the audience is not being ministered to," wrote another pastor on Instagram. They are being lied to. For many in the gospel community, Tmain's silence is no longer seen as a flaw but as a shield that protects not only Walter's heritage but also the church's fragile relationship with being open about feelings. Because this is the harsh truth. In gospel society, being strong often means being quiet. People expect leaders to pray through the pain, sing through the sadness, and smile through the suffering. People often think that struggling is a sign of weakness or, even worse, spiritual failure. But Walter Hawkins's brave son showed that silence can also be a jail. He made it clear that even though he loved and respected his dad's work in church and music, he could no longer carry the emotional weight of secrets that had been kept for too long. He told her, "I'm not trying to ruin my dad's name. I want to set the man behind the legacy free." That was his due. That one sentence hit me like a ton of bricks, because behind every great gospel song, every fiery lecture, and every sold-out revival is a person, a soul, a child of God who sometimes just needs to be heard. This is where it all ends. We'll end with a strong reminder of what Walter Hawkins' life and death can teach us about telling the truth, breaking generations of silence, and healing in public and private. And trust me, you'll remember the finish. We think of wonderful, changed, and end when we think of Bishop Walter Hawkins. Thank you, Lord. Songs that helped many people. Lyrics that made us feel better in hospital rooms, at wakes, at revivals, and in our own quiet times of sadness. However, his son's voice, which shook but did not wobble, helped him hear. We can finally see the person who makes the music. And the man wasn't perfect. He could be touched. He became no longer a mythic gospel superhero. He changed into a father, a minister, and a man or women who carried wounds too deep for microphones. A man who in his final days whispered a fact many never knew he held. "I forgot to attend to myself." In the one's 9 phrases, he didn't simply speak to his own journey. He spoke to a whole generation of gospel leaders, pastors, choir directors, and ministry households who gave their all to the church and sometimes misplaced themselves in the procedure. And Tumain, she held his secrets and techniques no longer out of weakness, but out of honor. Her silence, once misunderstood, now speaks louder than ever. It is a silence that protected legacy, own family, and religion, but additionally tragically behind schedule healing. Now, Walter Hawkins' son has made it clear, legacy does now not should imply perfection. Legacy can mean honesty, transparency, healing. He stated, "I don't need my father's memory to only be celebrated at the pulpit. I desired to help people off the stage, backstage, in therapy rooms, in circle of relative circles wherein the actual work starts. And that is wherein we as lovers, followers, and religion leaders are called to concentrate." That is no longer pretty much a gospel massive and his final phrases. That is approximately what we do with the fact now that it's out. It's approximately selecting to forestall hiding our ache for the sake of look. It is about letting our leaders be human. It is about giving permission to sense, to heal, and sure, to talk. The Gospel Network has reached a crossroads. Can we maintain to glorify simplest the polished photograph, the spotless gown, the digital camera-ready sermons? Or can we start to embrace the total humanity of these called to serve? Because maybe, simply perhaps, the most powerful Love Alive album hasn't been recorded, but maybe it's in the families who in the end say what has been unsaid. In the sons who dare to speak, inside the wives who mourn in silence, in the leaders who weep at the back of the pulpit and nevertheless locate energy to lead. This is how we honor Bishop Walter Hawkins now. Not just with a music, now not just with a submit, but with the courage to be actual, with ourselves and with each different. We want to listen from you. Do you watched Walter's final phrases were to the gospel global? Need to Tumain have spoken sooner, or was her silence sacred? Let us know your thoughts within the comments below. And if this story touched you, proportion it, now not simply on your feed, however with someone who desires recovery, fact, and the braveness to sooner or later speak up. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you by no means miss some other story that exhibits the truth at the back of the highlight. This is greater than only a story. It is emotion.